Good morning, everyone. It's Dexter here from UK, and thanks for joining us for today's webinar, Unleash the Full Power of BIM for MEP. Technical consultant Brennan will be presenting for us. Before we start, we'll just go through about ATK. We're all about fostering innovation through consulting and training. ATK Technologies plays a vital role in helping infrastructure, building, mining, construction, architecture, and manufacturing industries reach their full potential by delivering complete technology solutions and support services such as education, consulting, and IT managed services. We work with visionaries to shape the future of design and in turn enable them through innovation to minimize risks, improve productivity, and achieve excellence. ATK Technologies is considered the business partner of choice and trusted advisor by medians and clients. We partner with major software and hardware vendors to meet our clients' technology needs. We strive to exceed client expectations by understanding the challenges and delivering solutions through experience and innovation. We work with clients and companies of any size nationally and abroad. Over to you, Brendan.
Thanks very much, Dexter. And hi, everyone. Thanks for taking your time to join us today on this webinar. Just a little bit about myself real quickly. So Brendan Upton is my name. I'm the Senior MEP Technical Consultant here with ATK Technologies. And about 20 years experience now in the MEP industry. An authorised instructor for Autodesk. I've been with ATK since 2013. And my main area is looking into multidiscipline BIM coordination, but specifically into the MEP area and training and implementation. And I also deal with the industry initiative BIM Oz, where we are the technical advisors for that. So I get heavily involved in that myself, and some of you on the call may be aware of that. All right, just a quick agenda before we jump in. So we wanted to dive a little bit deeper into some of the more recent, updates for Revit MEP, particularly in Revit 2021. So today, what we want to do is focus on some of the electrical features that, have probably not been not been touched too much in the last few years, over the last few updates, but in Revit 2021, there's been some pretty good updates. So this is what we want to focus on today. So what I want to run through is, I want to quickly just talk about what's called the Autodesk Public Roadmap. Some of you may not be aware of that, so I just want to discuss what that is, where you can actually find out what Autodesk's, future investment and future development areas are for the different areas of Revit. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that and show you where you can get some resources around that. And then I'm going to jump in to have a look at some of the updates. So we're going to be looking about things about circuit naming, around the switchboard, circuit phase selections, and circuit quantities. I also want to touch on single phase panel boards. There's another update which is just regarding having panel schedules under the sheets in the project browser. So I just want to touch on that. There's also been some enhancements in the panel schedule view itself. Okay, then I'm going to do a quick live demo just to show and jump into Revit a bit around what I'm going to go through in this presentation, just to show you it in practice. And then I just want to end the webinar just with a quick sort of more overview mention of the work sharing improvements for MEP that have come through that you'll start to see in Revit 2021 as well, and talk a little bit about that. Okay, and we'll leave some time for some questions at the end. Feel free to, you should have a question or a chat box in your Zoom panel, in your webinar panel there at your end. So feel free to post some questions in there as we go. And at the end, I'll take some time to review those, and I'll answer what I can. Anything that I can't answer, we will certainly get back to you. We will go and find the answers and come back to you. All right, so let's get moving. Thanks again for joining us. All right, so what is the Autodesk Public Roadmap? So I've got a little link there at the top of this slide, which is actually on part of what's called the blogs, the Autodesk blogs website. So they've actually recently been putting a lot of good information and resource into this area. And it's where you can get a lot of information about not only what has been updated, but what they're planning, what's coming, what feedback they're actually taking from users like yourselves through these initiatives, what feedback they're taking and what they're paying attention to, and what they're looking to work on. Okay, so if I quickly just show you if I quickly just show you that, so if you were to click on that link, so blogs.autodesk.com/Revit/category/roadmap, okay, that will take you to a page that looks something like this. Okay, and I don't want to spend too long in here, but I just wanted to show you this so you can get a feel for, there's some really good resources in here, okay? So this is the official blog site of Autodesk, okay, and this is their public roadmap. So that's important. This is public, so this is accessible by anyone, including yourselves, okay? So what you can do if you haven't seen this, you can drill in here and you can actually access information in here about what's coming up. Okay, if I actually go back one step here, all right, that's right, and scroll down, you can see that they've got actually, it's like a public Trello board where they've actually got cards where you can see what the input they're getting from users and what areas that they're looking to develop. Okay, and you can actually, if you want to, you can actually input on this. Okay, so not only is this a very good way to get an understanding of what they're potentially going to be working on, but it's also a way that if you wish, you can get involved and you can actually sign in and you can put your own questions and comments in as well. Okay, there's also some cool video resources here as well, which goes through and breaks up per discipline. So obviously this is architecture. You guys are going to be interested in MEP. So if you scroll down, you should see there's a for systems engineering, and that will all be all about the MEP roadmaps and specific MEP updates. And then the very bottom one, I think, yeah, that's the working together. So that's like your common one. Okay, so just a useful website, can get some good information there. So just keep that in mind. All right. Okay, I'll close that down. Let's get back to the slide. So you can see here, if we're focusing on the electrical updates, you can see on this slide some of the updates that are ticked here that I've already done. These are particularly the ones we're going to have a quick look at today. But you can see some examples of other areas in MEP that they're on these blue cards here where they're developing. Okay. All right. In terms of these electrical enhancements, I just thought I'd put this slide up. It's kind of like the themes that they were sort of focusing on. There were three main themes in terms of these electrical enhancements, and those being globalization, distribution system logic, and then basically just ease of use, functionality for the end user, right? So a big part of it is the globalization, and all that means is to benefit not just the US or the UK, but the global markets that are using ATK, such as us here in Australia and the Australasian region as well, right? A lot of these electrical tools historically in Revit, which I'll talk a little bit more about as we go, but a lot of these tools, as I'm sure you guys are aware, if you're electrical, if you're in the electrical discipline, a lot of these tools have been historically produced with a US or UK centric spin on them. Some of them are not so relevant, and some is very limiting for how we need to document things here in Australia, for example. So some of these enhancements, hopefully you're going to see, if you haven't already, that it's giving you a lot more flexibility to document on the electrical side of things. Okay. So let's jump into some of the main things, and I just want to discuss over a few slides to begin with, and then, as I said, I'll jump into a live demo and show a bit of it in practice. So the circuit naming is one of the bigger things. Okay, there have been a couple of updates in the last couple of versions of Revit that has started this process of being able to circuit name, but it was still very much hard-coded prior to Revit 2021. Right. So, as that sort of red note says there up the top, prior to Revit 2021, the circuit namings were pretty much identified by a hard-coded integer numbering scheme, right? So you didn't really have a lot of play. But now in Revit 2021, you've got in the electrical settings window, you have this new circuit naming area here, which is what I want to talk a little bit about. Okay, so basically what you can do is you can jump into the electrical settings, the same area as you would have in the past in Revit. So you go into the electrical settings, and in the electrical settings, the first point of call is to have a look at the general area, and you've got these circuit naming by phase overrides and fields here that you can edit. So you can name them however you want. You know, some regions label phases A, B, and C, as I understand it. Some, you know, label them L1, L2, etc. Some just do it with a prefix. Some areas, you know, some countries do it with a prefix and a suffix. There's a bunch of different combinations. Okay, and this tool is hopefully now allowing you to sort of get that that flexibility to be able to, rather than just having a hard-coded number that you can't change, which is what it was historically. Okay. And a lot of this can, as I understand it as well, can be potentially project specific as well. So hopefully this is going to allow you to create some different schemes, and I'll show you how you can do that. Okay, so if I just jump to the next slide, which delves a bit more into the circuit naming window. So when you click into the circuit naming here, it allows you to basically set up what we call circuit naming schemes. Okay. So you can create any number as you wish, and once you're in a new scheme, you can see I've just called one here new circuit name for want of a better name. All right, but you would call it, you know, whatever's relevant to your project or to your electrical design. And once you've got that created, you can then jump into the secondary dialog box here, which lets you add circuit parameters. Okay, and you can see an example of the list here. Okay, so you can build up a schema of pretty much how you need it to be, and you can change the order of these. You can add prefixes, suffixes, separators as well, and you can, you know, add these, much like adding, you know, parameters to a schedule in Revit, which, you know, most of you should be familiar with, I would think. It's a similar sort of a dialogue. You've got a list here on the left, and you basically add over to the pane on the right, and then you can build up the scheme from there with prefixes and suffixes. Okay. Further to that, they've also added, as this note here is implying, the ability to add even custom shared parameters in. So you can take it even a bit further, and if you want to be naming your circuits by a custom, one of your company shared parameters, you can certainly start to do that now as well with the ability here to add the shared parameters. Okay, so that's another welcome update too. Okay, and there's a couple of other things here to be aware of. Okay, so first of all, in the load classifications, they've added the ability to put in an abbreviation here for the load classifications, and you'll see that if we come back over here to the list here in the middle, you can see that load classifications abbreviation there. So that forms part of that list of parameters that you have access to now to add to your circuit naming. Okay, so you can start to put abbreviations in there and do it that way if you wish, which I'll show you how to do that as well. Okay, and then just lastly on this slide, once you've set up a circuit naming scheme, okay, whatever you set, so as I said, you can have multiple here, you don't just have to have one, but whichever one is, you know, similar to other workflows in Revit and other dialog box areas, whichever one is the sort of the visible one or the active one here, it will become the default one. Okay, and then once you're out in your project, you have a circuit naming parameter which is available on your panel board families, which some of you know, that's been there for a couple of versions of Revit, but it was not as broad as this. It was a little bit more limiting. There was less options here, but with this circuit naming now, they've added first of all, they've added the by project option. So when you set it to that, it'll just take on whatever you've set as your default circuit naming scheme in this dialog. Or if you've created multiple, you know, different circuit naming schemes here, and you've got a list, those individual circuit names will actually, in an instant sort of fashion, be able to be selectable here on this pull down menu. So you can, on the fly, instance based, open up a panel schedule and set the circuit naming to a specific one rather than just be by project. So you can start to have some different ones even in the same project, some different schemes going. Okay. All right, so that's a little bit of an overview about the circuit naming. Okay, so let's just park that for a minute and we'll move on. I'll work through some slides on the other updates, and then we'll jump into Revit. Okay, so just quickly around the switchboard circuit phase selection. Okay, so they've added a feature in here when you're in a switchboard schedule, switchboard panel schedule. Okay, they've added this switch phase button here, which allows you to switch the loads over the different phases if you need to. Okay, this only works on single phase distribution boards. So if you've got single phase distribution boards that are being fed by a switchboard, and then you modify your switchboard schedule here to show all 3 phases, you can use this switch phase button to move them and switch them over to the different phases and balance out your load as you require. So that previously wasn't possible to do that. So if that's something that you need to do, that's an area that you can delve into as well. Okay. So you'll see, probably one more thing to point out there is that you'll see this button will generally be grayed out when you're in a schedule view. It'll only be active when you've got firstly when you've got a switchboard panel schedule open. And secondly, when you've got selected a distribution board being fed by that switchboard, that is a single phase. Okay, that's when it'll activate. That's when you can start to move them across. Okay, if it's 3 phase or 3 poles, it will not work. It will still be grayed out. Okay. Okay, another area is just continuing on the switchboard side of things. So there's a switchboard circuit quantity enhancement that they've added in as well. Okay, so on your switchboard families, in Revit 2021, when you select the switchboard under the electrical circuiting grouping of properties or parameters, you'll see the maximum number of circuits field here that you can adjust, that you as the user can adjust. Okay, and that lets you control, just lets you have more control about what's visible in your schedule and how it's formatted. Okay. Okay, another little point to talk about is single phase panel boards. Okay, now this one, I've just chucked some notes up here just to sort of discuss this in a little bit more detail. I would probably note here to say that this particular enhancement may not be as beneficial to some workflows for Australian electrical design or this region. It may be more of a benefit to some of the overseas, but I still think it's worth mentioning because it could be something that could be relevant, even if it's not relevant to a project in this region. Some of you may be working on projects in other regions as well. So I think it's worth mentioning. So basically, the gist of this one is that they've updated the behavior of single phase boards where previously Revit didn't properly deal with those single phase line to neutral panels. Okay, there were known issues previously where users were able to feed a panel from another panel with fewer poles. Okay, which is basically logical, obviously, but Revit was a shortcoming in the software. It allowed it to do that and maintain the connection, but it was obviously going to lead to and would lead to discrepancies in the electrical design. So it needed to be fixed. So they've fixed that now in Revit 2021. Okay, it is worth noting that there is a minor impact when upgrading your project. So if you're upgrading a project prior to 2021, if you're upgrading that project up to Revit 2021 and you do have some circuits that might have been connected in this fashion, what will happen is you'll get a warning message. Okay, so it's not going to break it, though the circuits will be maintained, but if you then go to edit those circuits in that new 2021 environment, a warning message will appear and say that there's a discrepancy between the panels and it needs to be addressed. Okay. Another quick note there at the bottom, just about single phase line to neutral panel can be used logically to represent an emergency lighting inverter pane as well. Okay. All right. Another quick minor little update here, but I think it's a handy one to know, is that the panel schedules now will, when you place panel schedules on a sheet view in Revit, they will now, much like any other view or schedule in Revit, they will now appear under the sheets in the project browser. So the sheet that you place it on, that panel schedule will be there, when you expand out your sheet and see what views are on that sheet. the panel schedule is now included in that as well. So that's, you know, might seem like a minor one, but it is quite helpful. It does allow you to, you know, because sometimes on large projects, obviously you can have quite a few panel schedules. They add up quite quickly. So it's a really good way of being able to not only search for those ones, but know what sheets they're on, right? It's just a much easier way to navigate through the project. Okay, so I'll show you that in action as well. Okay. Panel schedule view enhancements. Okay, so this is just another little minor update, but I think it's worth mentioning because it's quite handy. Okay, basically what this one is indicating is that when you are in a panel schedule view, you do have the ability now to click on to different areas of the schedule and different cells of the schedule, and different properties will activate and allow you to edit those different properties. Okay, so as this sort of diagram is indicating here, if you have a look at this diagram, you can kind of see there's different colors here. You can kind of see like the orange shaded, and then the green, and then the mauve shaded here. Okay. When you click in these different areas, you'll get your different properties. So for example, if you want to edit the project properties, when you're in the panel schedule view, you can click in this top orange shaded area, and you'll get the properties window, the project properties window activate. Okay, if you click into this green area where the summary of the panel is, you'll get the panel properties. So you'll be able to access and edit the panel properties. And if you click down in the body of the schedule, you'll be able to edit the circuit properties. Okay, and also be aware, just like elsewhere in Revit, you also do have the ability to flick between those different property windows within the properties itself. Okay, so you've got that little pull down menu. But that's just another one, just another little update there, enhancement that, you know, is a bit of a shortcut, a bit of a nice to know, a bit of a nice to have. So just be aware of that one, and it's contextually sensitive as well, obviously, like every other ribbon in Revit. Okay. All right, so let me quickly jump into Revit. See if I can do this seamlessly. Let me go there. Okay, so I'm in Revit now. So I've just got a little very, very basic sample model here, project open. Okay, I'm not going to go too crazy here. This is a high level sort of some examples here just to show you where these tools are and where you can find and access these. Okay, so let's go and have a look at the circuit naming first of all. All right, in action. Okay, so I've set up a couple of basic lighting power circuits here. Okay, and I've got a couple of panel boards, distribution boards, and I've got a lighting panel boards, and I've got a couple. I've got a switchboard here as well. Okay, and I've got a few views open here, so you can see I've got some panel schedules open here. Okay, so first of all, if I go up to the manage and I go to the electrical settings. Okay, in here is where I can access, first of all, in the general settings, this is where I can access the circuit naming by phase fields here. Okay, now depending on the template you start from, there'll be a setting here. Okay, there'll be a set value, I should say, here. Okay, but you have the ability to edit this. So whether you want to leave it as ABC, or whether you want it to be something like L1, L2 and L3, or even something different again, you can certainly start to change and put whatever you want in there. Okay, so that's one of the first steps that you can do. Okay, once you've done that, then let's have a quick look now down at this new circuit naming area. Okay, so I can click into the circuit naming here, and this is where I can start to create my own circuit naming, my own custom circuit naming scheme. Okay, now as I said, I've created one already here, and I've just called it new. So basically what you can do is you click on the new scheme. Okay, you can give it a name. All right, and once you've given it a name, I'll go and edit this one that's already there because it'll be a bit quicker. All right, so once you've given it a name, you can then add whatever properties, whatever circuit parameters that are available here from this list on the left, you can add them over and include them in the naming scheme. Okay, now just like any schedule type window in Revit, you've got the ability to change the order of these. Okay, you can add additional, come back in later and add additional, you can remove. And as I said, you've got prefix and suffix and separator fields here as well. Okay, these are just sample values, typical scenario in Revit, you get a sample value here. Okay, but that is essentially how you can make up your custom circuit naming scheme. Okay, Also, as I mentioned, don't forget, if you'd like to investigate further, you can click on the shared parameters workflow and add custom shared parameters in here. Okay. If I say select, I think I was toying around with some shared parameters here. I'd use some different types of parameters as well, but I'll show you those. In fact, let me load those in right now. Okay, and we'll see if we can get those, because they will be loaded into the project as well. So you can see they come in now on the list. Okay, and if I want to, I won't for the moment, I'll leave it off, but if I wanted to, I could add them over into my naming scheme. Okay, all right, so I'll click OK onto that. All right, okay, once I've got at least one new naming scheme, I'm good to go. As I said, you can create multiple. You can have any number here in a list, but whichever one is the visible one, that will be the default project one. Okay, you can see it says by project circuit naming scheme. So at the moment, it's called my new circuit name. Okay, all right. If I click OK to that, all right. If I now, you can see that these lighting layouts here, I've got. Okay. This is DB, I've named this one DB01 and this one is DB02. Okay, so you can see this one is being fed by DB01, and I believe this one over here is also being fed. Oh no, at the moment I've got it fed by DB02. Let's actually change that to DB01. Okay, so they're both being fed by DB01. Okay, if I now go to that panel schedule, okay, I can start to play around with this, right? So what I can actually do is, if I actually click using that, what I said, clicking in different areas of the schedule, I can see how my properties are changing. So I click into the body, I've got the circuit properties. If I click up here into the title area, I've got my actual panel board properties. And if I scroll down to the bottom, or towards the bottom, okay, under the electrical circuiting grouping here, you'll see this is where you'll find the circuit naming parameter. And you'll see from that list, I've got not only I've got the previous options that were there prior to 2021, but I've now got both the by project option here, which will just do whatever that default project default one is, okay? Or I can pick individual ones that I've created on the fly and just set that one to this scheme. So if I just go, in fact, let's do that instance one. Let's just click it on that for the moment. Click apply. You can see how it's now taking on board because I changed those phases names to L1, L2. Okay. Not only that, if I actually, let's have a quick look at the load classifications, because I know that these circuits are on the lighting load classification. So if I go to my load classifications and I select my lighting, okay, you can see all of these have got the abbreviation, the new abbreviation field here. You see it here, just for example purposes here, I've just put abbreviations easy to see, just LI, okay, just as an example, okay. You can put whatever you want if you do want to use this workflow, okay, you can put whatever you want in there, but I've just put an example. All right, well, now that's there, click OK. If I go back to my manage, back to my electrical settings and back into the circuit naming, I can edit that circuit name and I can add, for example, that load classification abbreviation. Click OK, click OK, and you can see that's now added that abbreviation into the circuit names. Okay, so you can start to build up a really custom circuit name. So you've got a lot of more flexibility now rather than just the hard-coded limited options that you had previously. Okay. As I said, don't forget you've got the ability to put separators. If you want to put a dash or a underscore or prefix and suffixes that you can add, so you can really build out exactly the way you want it to. Okay. While we're here as well, don't forget that you do actually there's another little shortcut that you can adopt here as well. If you haven't already tried, in the circuit naming field here, you can actually just set it to be prefixed as well, and you do have a circuit prefix here too. So that's another way that you can say, well, I just want to prefix everything with L. That's another way that you can name your circuits as well. Okay, so you've got a few different options in there now, I guess, is the main thing to be aware of. Okay. All right, I'll quickly show you the switchboard. Okay, so if I go over to my switchboard schedule here. Okay, you see I've got a couple of, I've got 3 distribution boards or panel boards on being fed by this switchboard. Okay, the first 2, DBO1 and 2, are 3, number of poles at 3. All right, the third one I've added into the project is I've set it as a single phase. Okay, so can you see how when I go up to, when I look at my ribbon, there's that switch phases option, but it's grayed out because it doesn't work on if it's not single phase. Okay, whereas once I go to the next one, I can actually activate that and I can switch my loads across. Okay, so that was just a quick one, just be aware that's how that's working. It only works for single phase panels. Okay, you do need to also delve a little bit into which we're not going to touch in this webinar, but a little bit into the makeup of your panel schedule templates. Okay. Be aware that you do have the ability on the Manage tab to both manage and edit your panel schedule templates. Okay, so you can add columns, you can add rows, you can add, those phases in. Okay, and then you can make those visible, and then you can start to move them across. Okay, so just be aware of that. Okay. The switchboard circuit quantity, so that's the other one to just quickly show you as well. Okay, so when you're in the properties of your switchboard, okay, there is, again, under that same grouping, there's that maximum number of circuits. Okay, so you can set that to, whatever number you want, and that's accessible through here, through the board, or even if you're in the, come back to my floor plan view, it's simply just the properties of that switchboard, right? So whether you're in this view or whether you're in the panel schedule view, you click into these switchboard properties, and you'll find it under that electrical circuiting grouping. Okay, so maximum number of circuits. So that's where that is. Okay. All right, let's have a quick look at the panel schedules under the sheet. Okay, so if I've set up a sheet here, this one here, well, let me go to that. Okay, so I've set up this sheet and I've actually placed that DBO1 panel schedule onto that sheet view. As you can see now in the project browser, if I expand out that sheet, it's now, which it didn't do previously prior to 2021, but now it's actually visible. It'll be on the list of whatever other views are on that sheet. So you can easily see, okay, yep, that schedule's on that sheet. I can also, search for it as well through here. So I've got a little bit more options there too. And obviously this is a basic example. I don't have too many panel schedules at the moment in this project, but on a live project that you guys are typically working on, I'd say you're going to have quite a few, and it gets busy pretty quickly, right? So this is just all helpful, being able to find this stuff. Okay. And panel schedule view enhancements, I kind of already sort of showed that, but let's just have a look at that one more time. So if I go back to the panel schedule view, you can see, as I said, if you click on different areas of the schedule view, your property. So if you keep your eye on my properties here on the left, if I click over into the body of the schedule, you can see it's now swapped out to be the panel schedule properties. Okay, and then if I click into an actual individual circuit row, it's now the electrical circuit properties. Okay, and keep in mind, as I said as well, that you can actually you click on this little putter menu here, you can flick between all the different property states there as well. Okay, so if you need to be working on this and editing as you go, rather than having to flick back to the view, back to here, back to there, you can kind of just stay in this one view and go through here. That's sometimes a good workflow to adopt as well. Okay. All right, I think that ends the live demo. I'm conscious of the time here, so let me jump back into the slide. I've got a couple more quick slides that I just want to run through. Okay. And this is just more of a generalized update in Revit 2021 for all of MEP, but I wanted to mention it because I thought it would still be pertinent to you guys and are good to know. Okay, so basically what they've done in Revit 2021 is there's been some work sharing improvements for MEP, particularly for MEP Connected Systems. So we're talking duct, tray, conduit, piping. Okay. I'm sure many of you will have experienced in the past, when you're working on a central, local central work shared project environment, and there's more than one of you working on the one central file. Okay, Revit MEP Connected Systems can give you a little bit of a headache. I'll say some of the time. Some of you might be saying most of the time, perhaps. But previously in Revit, obviously there was Some issues with the way that elements were being checked out, particularly if they belonged to a connected run. Okay, these basic images here on the screen are kind of just demonstrating that. Okay, that top image here is, these are walls. Okay, architectural walls in a model, and this bottom image is ductwork, right? So the big difference with the way that the walls and architectural elements work, as opposed to MEP, when you're talking about checking out and work sharing, is that even though these walls are connected and they have smart relationships, it's never really been an issue. Whereas when a user grabs one section of wall, that's the only bit that's checked out, and if they move it, it's not going to mess up anyone else in the project with trying to edit these other walls. Okay, it's only checking out that green highlight element. Whereas historically, the behavior in Revit MEP, when you've got a connected duct run like we have here in this example, as soon as the user selects just one segment of that duct run, and this is applicable for ducts, pipes, cable tray and conduits, same thing. When a user selects just that one segment, the whole connected run pretty much gets checked out. And so they're just moving one thing, but then all of a sudden someone's trying to do something down the other end of a system, or even if they're not even trying to edit it, but just in their model, it's telling them that they can't access because things are, user A has got access. Okay, and there's some really odd results ensued, and it was always a bit of a headache. Okay, so long story short, they have made a lot of updates on this, and they've changed the way that this behaves in terms of how elements get checked out in these connected runs. So moving forward, hopefully you should see a large improvement with the way that features, and less, warnings and less unpredictable results of, systems, connected runs going haywire and things like that, and losing fittings and things like that. Okay. Same for, that little distiller diagram here on the right is a wire, is a, outlet electrical power circuit with some wires on there. Similar thing with these connected wires. Sometimes you can get some odd results when walls move and you're hosting your elements to walls, your electrical, fixtures and things. It can have a similar result as to what I was just, describing. And so they've fixed that as well. Okay. And then the second thing is in terms of mostly to do with piping, but it's known that it's potentially an issue with other, containment runs as well, duct and tray, etc. Is that when you've got a connected run and you remove an inline element, historically Revit will heal that. So there'll be an auto heal where if you've got a pipe in a valve run, for example, and you delete that pipe, or you've got a damper in a duct run and you delete that damper, Revit in the background will automatically auto heal and reconnect that run up to make it one continuous run again. However, that was discovered apparently to be breaking the work sharing and the checking out and the way that behaves amongst users as well. So that was particularly on piping. That was a bit of an issue, but potentially for around the others as well. So now what they've done is they've just for piping at the moment, I believe, but they're probably going to be looking at this further as these different updates come out. They have disabled the auto heal to alleviate that issue happening around the checking out of those elements, because it's deleting a pipe and then it's auto healing the run, but it's not behaving properly in a workshed environment. Okay, so what they've done is they've removed that auto heal option. And for piping, if you delete a valve like this little example here down on the right, you manually have to now just trim connect that run back up. Okay, might seem like it's a little bit backwards going back to a manual kind of a workflow, but it means it will alleviate some of that stress of getting those workshed errors, and that's where they're going with that. So just be aware of that. All right, I think that brings us to the end of the webinar. So we've got some time for questions. I'll open up the question window at my end. I don't think I'm seeing anything at the moment, but I'll give you a minute or so, guys. Feel free, if anyone does have any questions, please, type them in. If you don't have any now, but you think of some later as well, always, feel free to reach out. Dexter will go through, we've got some contact details on the next couple of slides here in a sec. Most of you should know already, I guess, how to get in touch with us as well. So please reach out. We're always happy to help and support. So please let us know. if there's anything that we can help you with or any further questions you have around this side of things. But yeah, hopefully that's been helpful, guys. Oh, hang on, I think we've got one question come through here. Are we getting this recording sent through to us? Okay, so all of these webinars that we've been doing are being recorded. This one is certainly being recorded, and it will be available on our A2K YouTube official YouTube channel. So that if you go into YouTube and search for A2K, and then go to there'll be a playlist there. There'll be a webinars playlist, and you'll see, and all these recent ones should be there at the start. You should see them, but you can search for the name. Okay. So hopefully that helps, Pete. Yep, no worries at all. All good. One more, maybe 10 more seconds if there's anyone that's got any other questions. I'm not seeing anything else now. So Dexter, I might hand it back over to you if you're there to finish the webinar.
So thanks, Brendan. I'm not sure if you're seeing this, but we got a message from Adric.
Oh, okay.
They said, might be slightly unrelated, but is there any way of filing parameters from connected equipment? Example, a GPO with a shared parameter being filled by connected mechanical equipment.
To filter, yeah, that's a possibility. I mean, it'll be a little bit of a workflow that would need to be tested, but I don't see why it couldn't. It's one of those ones, right? And I can't really say off the top right here, yes, definitely, but I'd say that there's probably some options there that you could do for sure. Yeah. You probably got the ability to, if it's a shared parameter as well, you should be able to access that through the visibility graphics. So yeah, I'd say there'd be some options there. I'm just seeing those other, just one sec, Dexter, because I'm just seeing those other chats. I didn't have the chat window open, but I can see those other ones coming in now. Let me just make sure I answered that correctly. Parameters, connected equipment, or filling parameters from connected equipment. I do go. Yeah, okay. So there is a way that you can, depending on the equipment, there are some fields that you can drill into in the properties. Things like panel name, for example, is an example. Like there'll be a default for panel names in Revit that devices and lighting fixtures and switches adopt. But you can drill into that and you can override with that panel name, for example, and then they will inherit that name. So there's probably some options there that you've got with GPOs as well. So potentially that could be an option. But again, as I say, it's probably not something that I can go into too much detail here, obviously on the time I got, but certainly reach out. Happy to do another session or even do a bit of a call on that one as well. So all good. Good comment there. Loving the flexibility of 2021 with circuiting and panel surge options. Yeah, cool. Well, hopefully that's been helpful. Hopefully, obviously these webinars, we generally have to keep them pretty high level, but hopefully that's given you guys enough to go away with and know where those settings are now, so that you can start to customize this a bit further yourself. And as I said, reach out if you guys want, if you need any further help. Absolutely.